Welcome back to the shop. Today I'm going to just do whatever I want to in the shop. I'm going to clean up a little bit. I might work on some stuff. It is not going to be structured today. I'm going to work on what I want to work on, when I want to work on it, and probably bounce around and work on a couple of different assorted things. One of the things that I thought I might do, and I don't have a clamp wide enough to go across here. I do. I can't find it. I shouldn't say, but I've got some gaps in the wood here. But I don't think that's an excuse to let this keep deteriorating. I think I'll sand that down and stain it. And Alright, so there's the gel stain on there. Let me grab the can. That's this Old Masters gel stain. Don't know much about it. Don't do much woodwork. Don't do much staining. The only thing that I know is that when you stain something, or I guess when you varnish something in particular, you don't want to kick up a lot of dust around it. So I'm going to move this outside and let it dry. When I was a kid, we were staining the kitchen table, and my mother had come in and was worried about us being out here with the fumes and everything. And of course we had the doors shut. We lived on a dirt road, but they paved it. But to keep the dust down, had the doors closed, and she was worried about the fumes, so she kicked the fan on. And we came out, and the whole top of the table was just like sandpaper because it had just kicked up it was an almost undetectable level amount of dirt in the air. However, everything gravitated right towards that table, and my father and I had to sand it back down and restain the thing. So keeping the air movement down to a minimum is a key. And then they've since paved our road, so I don't have to worry too much about the dust. So, all right, on to the next project. So the next thing I think I'm going to tackle is the projects that we work on, and in particular Clay's projects of recently. He's been using this little utility cart. It's sort of hard to see that it's under there, but it's sort of a tool cart. It's been very handy. But for big ungainly things, it would be nice to have a sturdier stand that you could grip things to. And an engine stand would be ideal for large projects that you wanted to wheel in and out. This is not a good engine stand, so I got it for cheap. A little three-legged thing. It's probably good for a small four-cylinder engine, but I wouldn't want to put a big V8 or anything on this, and I don't do motor work like that, so this really doesn't serve much of a purpose for me. But what I'd like to do is fit this with a vise, and then if I had a vise on here, I could flip this around, and it would be, I think, sort of like it'd be more utilitarian. So let me go ahead and fire the welder up, and we'll tack a plate on there. I have a piece of 1/2 inch that I think I could weld on there. I don't know if I'll need to add a gusset or not. I think I might be pretty good, but we're going to get that welder fired up and we'll tack this on there. Alright, so I had some ancient 6011 rods that I came through and burned down in pretty deep, and then I just laid that 7024 on top of it. And that stuff, you don't have to, you just drag the rod. It makes people like me look like they might be able to throw down a weld. I mean, never mind the whole zigzag, because I'm a horrible welder. But that's pretty impressive for my skill set. I'm impressed. Never mind, it's all over the place, but I'll grind that sucker down, and that should be more than strong enough to put a little vise on. So let me grind it down and put the vise on it. I want a little basket to hold the roux and stuff. I know it's going to get a bunch of chowder and stuff thrown in it, but I like to have something to keep the assorted things I use on the grinder here. So let me see if I can do that. Alright, so I've got this old colander on there. It's aluminum, but it's got a pretty hefty steel ring around the outside. I mean, I wouldn't want to stand on it or anything, but I got enough Tapcons in there, or self-tappers in there. This is like a jeweler's. I think let me find a piece and I'll put it in here and show you how this works. Alright, just to give you a little bit of perspective on this, if I was to hold this, I mean, this is more than capable of holding this with my fingers. However, if I get too small in the video, you won't be able to see anything, so let me see that. It gets it jammed in there. And then there you are. It just saves your fingers a little bit. Again, this is a little bit bigger than you would typically use, but it's a pretty handy thing. I forget what these are called, some sort of jeweler's tool. But it's been very handy, and these are much faster and a little bit easier to use. I've got these other little this jeweler's vise. It occasionally has its application, but this is what I use more often than not. Alright, enough tinkering around with the shop. Let's see if I can actually fix something, or restore, or clean up, or whatever you want to call it. So, this is pretty rugged looking. I can remember seeing this and wondering what in the world would somebody make a screwdriver this big and heavy for as a kid. You know, it's just been floating around these toolboxes forever and ever and ever. And, you know, it took forever before I realized, or before my father told me, that this is an impact driver. And it should have two mechanisms, two motions, one to tighten and one to loosen. And it's unclear to me how you change it right now. Because right now it seems to twist. It seems to tighten now. And then, okay, and then if you, not exactly sure how that works, but now it's in loosen mode. So there's some sort of cam action in there. And this, you know, I've never had one apart, but I know it needs to be cleaned up, so we can go ahead and get started with that. And it's not that it's, you know, something that I need to use right now, because I have another one, and this Tecton one, yeah, I don't use it very frequently. But it's been sort of useful in the sense that you have this adapter that goes on there, and then it'll receive a much sturdier shank that's not your regular 1/4 inch. So I have one. It works good. These are relatively inexpensive in the scheme of things, but I think this one should be pretty cool to clean it up. But we'll just do it all with the wire wheel and the fiber wheel and see what it looks like. So I've wire wheeled it. It's a Craftsman 947-634, made in USA. I was tempted to try to disassemble this whole impact driver, but I'm striking out at every level. This flathead screw does not want to budge. And then this pin, which I thought would have been a roll pin of some sort, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but it's actually a spiral. I'm not sure if it was wound up and put in there. I've never seen anything like it. And in cases like this, well, I have a serious proclivity towards fixing things to death, and I do not want to fix this to death. So I think what might be a prudent course of action is to just clean this up as best as I can, and get it functioning again and reassemble it and call it a day. But I want to get in there and clean that out. So, you know, what are my options? I think the best thing I could do now is take this over to the parts washer, and we'll get this thing cleared out. And I'll show you. Hopefully I can get some pictures of the modification to the parts washer. Like any flat spot within reach, I pile stuff on top of it when we clear it off. I bought an aftermarket oil filter, remote oil filter kit, and then plumb that into the system. So now that when it cycles the fluid through it, it filters it. And that's just the cheapest oil filter I could find on Amazon. So that works good. What you can see, I've got this bowl in here, and I think it's wise to use some sort of bowl like this when you're cleaning parts. Sorry, you're not really in the shot. It's wise to use bowls like this when you're working on stuff, because if a small part falls off, when it falls in here, it's obviously harder to find, and then in worst case scenario, it falls down the drain, and then you're disassembling this whole puppy, which is really no fun at all. So, the other thing that I've talked about this at length in the prior videos is that you don't want to dirty up your parts washer, and as inane as that sounds, if you've got a wheel bearing, you know, clean it up as best as you can outside of here, and then preserve this fluid. It's not super expensive, but it's still $5 or $6 a gallon, and you don't want to just fill it up with grease and oils and stuff unnecessarily. I mean, it is designed to pull out grease and oils. However, you know, it's a closed loop. It's not going to filter itself out or clean anything. And this is just the fluid from Tractor Supply, the P06 stuff. Anyway, our PSC 1000 from Tractor Supply. Alright, I'm going to rinse this out some more. Alright, now that I have parts washing fluid all over my camera, I'm going to take this over to the you can see some of the stuff washing out of it still. I'm going to take this over to the fiber wheel, and that should give us a pretty good finish on this, hopefully. Alright, this tool is fighting me every inch of the way. Now I've got this bit that's stuck in there, and it's the very end is just chowder. It's got some sort of markings on here, but I'm going to have to put this in a vise and pound it off of there somehow. So I don't know if there's any easy way to do this other than just brute force, so I'll do that. That sucker was in there. Now let me go clean up the end with the sander and Alright, so there we are. There's that cleaned up Craftsman impact driver, and it does have a marking on the back. It's so hard to see. It says tighten and loosen, and that's that function where you push it in and turn it and it switches what direction. This is still piping hot, so it's a little hard for me to grab. But now that I've got the end out of it, I've effectively ruined that thing, so I need to figure out what size it is. And to do that, I got a micrometer. These are some cheap Chinese plastic ones, but I'm real happy with them. So we see 3.313, and then I have a little pocket scale here. We can go down here and say what's the closest thing to 313. 312 to 5/16. So I need to order some 5/16 bits. The other thing for more standard sizes, this kind of micrometer is very helpful. You know that, but halfway between a quarter and 3/8 is 5/16. So, but anyway, this is super helpful for just quick grabbing bolts and whatnot, and getting sizes. And then these decimal charts. This thing, I probably need a big one on the wall, but this little pocket machinist scale is come in handy. So that's about all I'm going to get into today. Going to go home and watch the Daytona 500. So that's it. I just want to say thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and I hope you enjoyed today's sort of composite of a bunch of different things. I hope you enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thanks.